So it's almost, I don't want to say almost impossible, but rather it's a little difficult to do a follow-up episode. And what I mean by a follow-up episode, like, okay, I did episode 1, now I'm doing an episode 2, and I was just thinking about, okay, what I'm going to talk about today, and what I'm going to deal with today, and what's going to really be the premise of what I'm going to speak about. And I had so many things in my mind, right, because I was laying in bed on a Sunday and just thinking about the things that bothered me, like what direction I wanted this podcast to go. Am I going to just be topical, or is it going to be a situation where I'm going to just randomly talk about whatever and see where the fuck it goes? And, I'm not worried about, oh, maybe I'll lose the interest of the person who's listening, and like, whatever, right? How to keep people engaged. But like, this is just my first time doing podcasting in a sense where like now, like the training wheels are off a little bit. Like, I don't have restrictions and I can just talk and go as I please and invite some people on here. And I guess to recap, I'll start there, is the fact that, like I spoke about where I came from, get a little glimpse of it. Where am I known at, which was in the poetry community. And I also talked about how I liked doing content creating. And I guess this podcast is just the start of it, I guess. But at the same time, I was thinking about how I could do it in a way that is still fun and enjoyable without sounding like I'm just talking a bunch of BS, right? And then I was also thinking about just a lot of things in my life that really bugged the crap out of me, that even though they don't bother me today, but it's something I never really spoke about. And one thing is about, I guess just like, I guess just talking about when people give like unsolicited advice and why sometimes unwanted opinions sometimes can harm people, even if the intention is not to harm them. So I was thinking about all that stuff. So I'll start with a recap in saying how I talked about, like the poetry and pretty much the ins and the outs of the poetry, the negative and the positive. So I was talking about how even though I went through I've experienced or I saw a lot of negative, but I also dealt with a lot of positive when it came to that, because I feel like I can't talk about the negatives without talking about the positives, because I did get to travel. I did get to host some shows. I did get to do things that I never thought my mind can get me to. And although there was some challenges along the way, I was able to go, like, kind of break out of my shell a little bit. So it is nerve-wracking because I know there's always failure in the midst of success, but it makes me a little uncomfortable thinking that, but what if people don't come? Because I had a situation, like I was supposed to have 3 shows, I ended up having 2 and combining 2 of them into 1. But I was thinking about, how I got discouraged on my second show, thinking people weren't gonna come, and it got to that point in my life where I kind of canceled the second show, because it got to a situation where all of a sudden people started bailing out. But I get it, because sometimes, things happen. I said, you know what? Maybe this is a sign that I shouldn't do the second show, and maybe I should just combine the second and third, and to just put it for August. And then that will give me more than enough time. And I already have venue issues as it is. So that was another issue I had to, but, whatever, it is what it is now. I do want to be careful what I say, because I don't want people to get the wrong message about, or I don't want people to think that I'm being ungrateful about anything. But there are a lot of things that do turn me off sometimes about people and things, and it seems as if, it was just, I don't know, man. I guess I'll start with I I guess the shows, like how it made me feel when I hosted my first show. Like the first one I ever did was in 2023. It was under the Unraveled Influence banner, and then the second one I did was with it's called Unraveled as Promise, and I did that with Florence and Bayonne with Poetry as Promised, and that became like such a good collaboration. There's always some hiccups, but that's everywhere. Then I did my last show, which was called Poetry in Bayonne, and that I felt like was more the essence of me. Like, okay, because I had nobody helping me, it was more like, okay, I want to just do this and see what happens, and I'm excited for what this was. I don't know where I'm going to go from here, but I know I have an outlet I can use so I could make things work, and I know, me wanting to do podcasting and everything too, and ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening for the first time, this is the inside of my real mind. This is what I think about. This is the raw truth at the end of the day. So there was so many directions I wanted to take this episode in. And I'll start with 2024. And I felt like it prepped me for 2025 because I feel like 2025 was the year that now I had to just stay still and gather up all that I know and what works and what won't work anymore. And like, for those who are wondering about Unraveled Influence, like, I understand everything just abruptly just ended. Because even when I was doing the Unraveled Influence and the interviews, I was also doing the Unraveled Conversations with Florence, Dalton, and Darian, and myself. And we only have one season. It was such a good experience. But the thing is, I went through so many things that, I abruptly just ended it. And I felt like that wasn't fair to them because I never actually had a conversation with them. I never actually sat down and spoke to them because everything started, because they had real life stuff to worry about too. And so did I. But I abruptly just ended it, and I never really had a conversation with them. And I think part of that was because I don't believe I was ready to talk about it yet. I wasn't ready to touch on why I decided to just end the whole Unravel thing. Last episode, I did mention that, a lot of Angela Murray's problems became the reflection of that. And I guess for the most part, I just want to detach myself from all of that. Just the Unraveled name itself, whether it was Unraveled Influence or Unraveled Conversation, like I just wanted to drift away from that, honestly. Like, I don't have animosity towards anybody, but it's just, there was a lot of things that kind of led to that. It wasn't just her, it was multiple things I didn't mention down in the first episode. Because once it became like an obligation to keep it up and running, that's when I knew I needed just to cut loose ends. I slowly started to upload them on YouTube a little bit. I mean, I didn't tell anybody about it. I just started uploading just to upload. Like, you watch, you don't. I don't care. It's not even the point anymore. But it's just something that I felt like, hey, look, like, this is what I went through. I don't want to dwell on that first episode. Like I said what I had to say, and I think that was clear. But I do feel like I do owe Florence, Dalton, and Darian an apology. I wasn't ready to talk about what I know I needed to talk about with them. And I don't know if you guys are listening. If you are, hey, look, I'm sorry, guys, for not talking. Like, I'm ready to have a private conversation with you guys and just explain everything. I know you guys would understand, but it's just like, I just didn't really give a, intimate one-on-one, like a four-way conversation like we always did in the chats. And it's just, I also felt like it was taking me away from the things of God and the things of my family, which is why now I decided to do the podcast and just focus on trying to rebuild myself. I think my biggest issue was I let too many people in, and that ended up just being something that for the long run, kind of ended up hurting me, because all I want to do is do poetry. All I want to do is do creative content, whatever the fuck that looks like. And I just feel like a lot of things were not letting me. And here's the thing. Yes, I'm a born again Christian, but I am not the holy then thou type of person because I've always been like this. There's just some things that my mind just does not compute. Like, it's just what I ask God, like, Lord, like, what is it that's making me like that? I've always been like that. What would typically offend a normal person does not offend me. And it's crazy to me to think about, like, why? Like, why do people get mad at me when I do certain things? Like, it's stuff like that I think about. And I'm just like, dude, but I'm sorry. Like, there are just some things I feel like it's not a big deal. I don't know if it's because civilization has programmed us to think a certain way and I'm just the exact opposite of it. I don't know. I was never taught about equity and why you should buy a house or why you shouldn't buy a house or maybe buy a condo or get a duplex or why is it so green or not so green on the other side to own your own business and be your own boss. Like, I don't know about that kind of stuff. I just know how to do what I do, and that's have a conversation with people. And I think what inspired the aspect of why I wanted to do podcasting was having a conversation with my residents because I'm a concierge at a residential building, and the people I interact with has inspired me. I said, I'm gonna just go and do it, hoping that people will listen. But I like to engage. I like to have a conversation. I'm not planning to do just solo all the time. I'm definitely gonna invite people on. I'm just very more discerning and careful now these days, but it's one of those situations like, okay, it is what it is. And honestly, when it comes to poetry community, there is a lot going on that I missed that when I started to log in back to Instagram, I'm just like, I feel like it was more like, I'm not surprised, but it's like, do I really want to be reminded of why I left in the first place? So little by little, I started unfollowing people, not telling people anything, and I'm okay with that. I feel like the real people who gravitate to me are the ones that will stay around. Like I've said this before on the first episode, where regardless of the negative, there's always positive, and I always try to hold on to that. How many will remain now that I've released these episodes? I don't know. But what I do know is I want to use what I have for good. I like to share. I don't like to gatekeep anything, but now I feel like I have to be careful who I share things with, because like I said before, I've invited way too many people, and I feel like that's part of the thing that tarnished what I was trying to build with Unraveled Influence. Now it's more like, you know what, I'm just being more discerned, and I want to be obedient to the discernment that I feel like God is trying to show me. And the thing is, I'm very closed. I've always been like that. I've always been to myself, and I think part of that is because my dad was like that growing up. That's all I ever saw. And even though I had my brother and my sister, but they had their lives, I have a 5 to 6 years difference between them, and our mindsets are different. Me and my brother are born again Christians, and even though there's I don't want to say a lot, there's things we agree on and there's things we don't agree on, and that's okay. And then I have other brothers and sisters in the faith that would just completely disagree and won't even hear another side of a story as to why it's okay to disagree. Like, they're just people like that, and I've learned that, you know what, I can't take it personal, and it is what it is. Because I feel like having accountability and being accountable over yourself and being realistic to the idea that, hey, you messed up. That's a reflection is good. I think reflection is definitely needed. Reflection is definitely important. And I feel like a lot of people don't do that. I feel like if a lot of us reflect, maybe we would get to the understanding of, hey, maybe I shouldn't take these things personal. And I do feel like I suffer from that. I beat myself up. I get annoyed. Like, I'll give you an example. I was getting annoyed at my son because he wasn't listening to me when I told him, hey, do not do that because you could mess up the AC. And he just kept doing it. And I guess it brought back a familiarity to me that made me feel like, okay, why am I getting pissed off when he's a 6-year-old who has autism? And my wife kept telling me, okay, he doesn't compute that. Like, he doesn't understand that. I'm like, okay, but you can't just teach him. But I caught myself saying that, and I'm just like, I started thinking about, well, how many people feel that about me? Like, how many people felt that about me? How many times my dad probably felt that way about me and making him think like, dude, I'm pretty sure he probably had thoughts about me feeling like, dude, he probably felt like, why is this kid stupid, or why is this kid like this? I'm not saying because I'm not saying I think like that. I'm just saying that's probably the thoughts that come to his mind. And I feel like with me as a parent, I go through that sometimes. I'm pretty sure my wife goes through that. As a matter of fact, I remember she sometimes beats herself up thinking she's a horrible mom, and I have to remind her, babe, you're a wonderful mother. I have to remind her, babe, you do a lot more than I could ever freaking do. And I tell her that every day because she is an amazing person. She's an amazing mom. I see how she is with my son, and I feel like she needs to know, like, I need to throw her flowers because she does a lot more than I could ever do in my life. And I do see I see my father in her, because my dad was like that. My dad was the man of the house, and he took on a lot of burdens that I'm probably never going to understand. I understand some of it now because I'm a parent, even though I always had the understanding, but unless you're a parent, there's like a circle, like you'll get the complete circle once you experience certain things. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. And there are times where I'll just look up and, like, in my house or something, I'm like, Dad, how did you deal with me? And I'm having a hard time dealing with my son. And my wife, like, how's she putting up with me and my BS, you know? Like, I think about that stuff. And she always just comforts me. My son always comforts me, even when I get these doubts. Because, you know, when you walk into things of God like I do, the devil likes to mess with you. The devil likes to put things in your head. Because let's be honest, the area of attack, most of the times when the devil is trying to attack you, or anything that's not of God tries to penetrate in your spiritual life, is always the eyes. It's always the eyes, man. And then through the eye, because the eye is like the gate into your body. So there's just something you really cannot unseen. And it's crazy to think about that. In civilization, whether you're a man of God or not, the fact is there's just some things you cannot unseen. And I always wonder why we don't talk about that kind of thing. Like, why aren't we having these conversations? And it's just something I think about, you know? It's something like, I don't know, like it is something that I think about every day. And I mean, yes, I'm pretty sure mothers go through this too. I go through it every day, even at work, even though I am a concierge and I do my best to get things done and do right by these residents. I have to remember that I also have a job to do, but I want to do everything possible to make them happy. Like, that's kind of how I am. Like, I want to be a people pleaser, but at the same time, who am I? Am I pleasing myself? Am I walking in my spiritual journey the way I should? No, I don't get that right at all the time. And this is why I feel like I need Jesus in my life. But there are times in my life I feel hopeless because I want to make sure that I could shine some kind of light. And I hope that, yeah, people see that my intentions are good, but the fact that I can have conversations with atheists about God and Jesus and them not judge me is kind of incredible. And it makes me think like, hey, because they always tell me like, hey, there's something different about you. You're not the typical holier than thou kind of Christian. Like, and it gives that intrigue. And I have met other people who later reveal, like, you know, God has revealed to me, oh, they're Christians too, or they believe in Jesus. Okay, that's a good start. We can kind of put something in the atmosphere and have like, whoever listens would be curious, I guess. But I always try my best to do right by myself, do right by people, and somehow, some way get right by God and do right by him. And it's like I always mess up sometimes. Actually, a lot of times I mess up. And I know there's no such thing as a perfect church. There's no such thing as a perfect walk. But I feel sad when I can't like fulfill what I feel God has helped me to fulfill. Like, I want to be the person that could open an opportunity for other people. That's why I created Unraveled Influence, so I can give people a spotlight in places that nobody else would get a spotlight at, you know. And I wanted to create this entity that when people heard Unraveled Influence, they think about, oh, like this was providing something that nobody else did. I wanted to give a spotlight to those who normally wouldn't get one. And I've had people tell me that. I'm proud of that. I'm very proud of that. But these are things I think about, you know. But then I've gotten unsolicited advice from people, and some of them are from people that I felt like, you know what, I don't think you're the one that should be telling me anything. You know, there's just so many things I was thinking about, and I keep going back to that unsolicited advice. I guess I'll make a point like this. I hate when you give me an opinion and I disagree in a conversation, and all of a sudden it gets from conversation to confrontation. And then now, because you don't agree with my mindset, it becomes a confrontation. Like, now you're insisting that why I should see it your way, why your way or your mindset is more valid and mine's isn't. And years ago, I used to react like, dude, like, how dare you? My whole thing is, yeah, how dare you? But I'm not reacting in a way where I'm not going to get confrontational back now. I'll hear what you have to say and I'll say what I have to say. But if what I say after that does not work out, then I'm not going to take it personal. I used to get mad about that. I don't get mad about it no more. I just let the people think they're right. Or, like, I'll hear what you have to say and I'll say whatever I have to say. But I've gotten to a point in my life where now I'm more of, I'll pick and choose what I respond to and what I don't respond to. Because I'm about to be 40. I don't have time for BS. And I don't have time to worry about what I have and don't have. I'm just blessed and lucky that I have a place I can call home. I'm blessed that I have a job that could provide me money. And when Christmas and New Year's and I get stuff from residents and stuff, you know, being a concierge, there's some perks. And I'm blessed that I can have a location to work at where I'm provided these things, and it's become so life-changing. Now I'm like, all right, Lord, I see why I had to leave my other job at CVS and to work where I work now. I see why now, why that became a thing. I'm a very emotional human being. I think as part of that, yes, I was around women, I was around men, but a lot of the men in my life were not very nice to me. A lot of the women were, and I don't know, I gravitate more towards women than I do towards men. And same thing with my wife. It's the vice versa. But me and my wife come to an understanding that these are our people. That's just the people we reach. The fact that my wife and I have this level of trust, like, she knows ain't nothing gonna happen. She knows, like, we're quick to shut things down. Like, I'm lucky that I've never had a situation, whether it's poetry or at work or even in personal life, where I felt threatened in my marriage. You know, like, I've never, like, by the grace of God, I have never did that. I've never cheated on anyone, even though I've been cheated on. I've been blessed to know, like, hey, I've been able to avoid certain things. And even though I do feel like I've made a lot of stupid decisions, but I do feel like those stupid decisions have helped me learn for the better. Where, and here's the thing too, because there are people who have gotten on me about my lifestyle. And one of that being that people feel like I have a little more of a laid back attitude than anything else. Here's the thing. I'm the kind of person that likes to play it safe. Because years ago, people would give me advice And it was things they knew, right? I'm not saying that every advice was bad, but there were things that maybe worked for them that didn't work for me. I used to be the kind of guy that would take their advice, and then when I actually tried it, it didn't work, or it started to work, but then nobody helped me to find a solution to, let's say, if something I was doing started not to work, then what can I do to change it so I can continue it to work? If I have to shift directions, like nobody taught me that stuff. Like I had to learn that on my own. And I've always been the kind of guy, like I give. But even that's been taken advantage of. Even that's been, that's just been a thing for me that unfortunately I had to face. And I'm learning now at age 39 what true discernment is, and it's hard. Like I did a video on Instagram about this rate. Like I've never faced racism until now. And that really stung at me, and I didn't know why. Because I never experienced that before. So even though I understood racism, but I never actually experienced it to fully understand the feeling of it. And when I finally experienced that, long story short, and now that I'm a little more calmer, now I can kind of talk about it a little bit. Pretty much what it came down to was, my son's autistic. He doesn't know. So my neighbor starts to yell at my son because he was climbing up the stairs. And it was an honest mistake. He got... And part of this, too, was over a patch of grass. I don't know. Whatever. And I was trying to diffuse the situation. And the more he got aggressive with me, the more I got aggressive back. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to disrespect my son and my wife. I'm sorry. That's not happening. I don't care that I'm in your property or whatever. There was a right and a wrong way to assess that. And all you had to do was, hey, I'll talk to you guys later. Or, hey, can we talk later? And he didn't do that. And he just insisted on escalating the situation to the point that he told me to go back to Section 8. And I wasn't feeling that. I was like, dude, you kidding me, bro? Like, normally that wouldn't bother me. But I guess the reason why it bothered me is because it bothered my wife. And he did that in front of my son and my wife and me, just to knowing. It's like he kind of knew that I was going to, like, wow, bro. Like, really? Now you're looking to, like you're pretty much aggressing. He pretended that he was calling the cops. And I was just like, all right, you know what? And I knew there was nobody on the other line of the phone, but I decided, you know what? I'm going to call the cops. And the minute the cops arrived, the one that we called, because nobody else came except for our cops that we called, all of a sudden, he hid behind his door, and all of a sudden, now his demeanor changed. Oh, now it's forget it now. Oh, now it's, oh, my bad. Now it's that. It is what it is now. And I've had a lot of people DM me, telling me, hey, although I understand your situation, maybe put, like, if I was going to talk about it, maybe I should have waited till I was a little calmer, and then maybe talk about it in a way that it doesn't come off aggressive and angry, and it wasn't a good look, like my brother spoke to me about it. A lot of people talked to me. People DM'd me telling me about it, and I really appreciate that. I didn't respond to a lot of people. It wasn't like I was ignoring and being dismissive. It was more like I just didn't want to talk about it no more. Some people I was just like, I get it. Other people were more like, I just like, let me just take everything in. And it seemed like the same message was very clear. Like, dude, I get it. And it's like I said before, the devil's a liar sometimes. And sometimes he will penetrate situations that get you out of character. I don't want to blame everything on the devil. But, in the spiritual life, sometimes that's just what it is. And I don't mean just Satan. I'm talking about like just anything that's not of God will penetrate themselves into your spiritual walk and disrupt it. But I like to think in ways like, hey, okay, but not everything is God. Not everything is the devil or spiritual life. Sometimes it's just me. Sometimes, hey, maybe it's just a thing where, okay, I know I suffer from anger, so maybe I should try to reassess myself. So there's also that type of thing. But for the most part, having a spiritual walk is not easy. It really isn't. And I've gotten to the point in my life where I discern who I listen to and who I don't listen to. I don't get caught up in the mega churches. I don't get caught up in the YouTube celebrity people, because one thing I will say, I have never claimed that I am a Christian content creator. I am a content creator who happens to be Christian, who likes to share, who likes to give thoughts, and who just likes to have great conversations, however that looks like. And if you're just listening and you just reach this message, thank you for listening. Thank you for making it this far. And I think that's all I have in my mind today, honestly. There's not really much to talk about rather than just whatever, because this was legit on my mind. So I just wanted to get that out there. I guess we take it from there. Follow me at the Andy Morales on YouTube. Jam them down. Instagram, this is Andy Morales. TikTok. And yeah, Spotify, you can listen to it. You can listen to it on Rumble. .com.